Today, we're diving into the story of one of history's most romanticized figures, the Fragrant Concubine. You've probably heard the story, right? It sounds like a perfect fairy tale, a beautiful Uyghur princess with this enchanting natural scent that just completely captivates an emperor. I mean, it's been turned into poems, plays, you name it. Okay, but here's the thing. What if that whole legend is a lie? Because the real story, well, it's this incredibly tangled web of rebellion, defiance, and a fight for identity that's still going on. The fragrant princess part, that's a myth. The woman behind it, though, oh, she was very real and honestly way more formidable. So to get to the truth, we've got to rewind way back, before the palace, before any of the legends, all the way to her birth in 1734. See, she wasn't born to be a concubine. She was born into a noble family that was deep in a generations-long struggle for independence. And just look at this timeline. It completely reframes her entire story, doesn't it? This isn't some passive princess waiting around. By 17, she's marrying a rebel leader. A few years later, she's taking on this political name, Nir Ilanor, and she's out there leading troops in battle against the Qing invasion. This is the life of a political and military leader, someone who was right in the thick of her people's fight for their own sovereignty. And listen, she wasn't just some figurehead, you know? Look at this list. She's a poet, fluent in the classical script, but she's also an expert with a horse, a sword, and a bow. She was actually commanding troops on the battlefield. So we're talking about someone who was so much more than a beautiful face. She was a brilliant, highly skilled, and educated leader of her people. All right, so this is where her story takes its most dramatic turn. She's captured in battle and presented like a prize to the Qianlong Emperor in Beijing. But what follows isn't a romance. Nope, it was a 3-year battle of wills, all happening inside the walls of the Forbidden City. I mean, right from her very first moment in the Forbidden City, she made her defiance crystal clear. Can you just picture it? The entire court is bowing to the emperor, but this one woman stays standing, basically challenging the most powerful man in the land right to his face. And this incredible act of courage, it just captivated him. So he then tried everything to win her over. And his campaign to win her over was, well, it was extraordinary. We're not talking about just a few gifts here. He literally built her a piece of her homeland inside Beijing. It had the right architecture, the plants she knew. He even built her a mosque and brought in an entire community for her. And yet she resisted every single move, secretly carrying a dagger with her as a constant sign of her resolve. And we have this one really powerful glimpse into her mindset from a poem that's attributed to her. This is no love poem. This is a political and spiritual last stand. It's a declaration that she was absolutely willing to die for her faith, her homeland, and her principles. 29. That's how old she was when she died in 1765. After 3 years of this incredible resistance, she was gone. Now, historical accounts suggest she was poisoned on the orders of the emperor's own mother, the Empress Dowager. Apparently, she feared the political fallout of having a defiant Muslim woman in the palace and, the possibility of a Muslim heir to the throne. Okay, so this is absolutely crucial. The names we actually know her by, they weren't her own. They were labels given to her by her captors and then by later generations. And each name tells a completely different story. This table really shows how her identity itself became a kind of battleground. Mamure Aziz, that was her, the individual. Nur Eleanor was the warrior queen her people looked up to. Then you get Xiang Fei, the fragrant concubine. That's the romantic legend the Qing court created, probably to erase the rebel. And then Iparhan, the name she's known by today among Uyghurs, was actually a 20th century move by scholars to reclaim her as their national hero. And you'd think her death would be the end of the mystery, but no, it just created a new one. Now we have 2 different locations, thousands of kilometers apart, and both of them claim to be her final resting place. And this whole debate, it really gets to the heart of who gets to own her story. So here are the 2 competing claims. Over in Kashgar, local tradition says her body was brought all the way back home in this epic journey. That's the story of a hero returning to her people. But then, in Beijing, archaeologists found a tomb they claimed was hers, which paints her as an honored imperial concubine. The thing is, the evidence for both is really debated. The Kashgar claim? It's all based on oral history, and the Beijing tomb? Well, forensic analysis suggests the remains belong to a much older woman who wasn't even Uyghur. So this debate really asks a fundamental question. Who gets to tell her story? So why? Why, after more than 2 centuries, is her story still such a battleground? Well, it's because she's not just some figure from the past. She's become a powerful, living symbol. And really, if there's one thing to take away from all this, it's how a single person's life can become a mirror for centuries of political change. The story of the Fragrant Concubine isn't just about what happened. It's about what different people at different times needed it to mean. And you can see how each era has kind of remade her in its own image. For Uyghurs, she's this powerful icon of unwavering resistance and faith. For the revolutionaries who came after the Qing dynasty, she was a fellow hero who fought against that old imperial system. And for modern China, her story is often spun as a romance, a symbol of ethnic harmony and unity. Every retelling tells you more about the storyteller than it does about her. So in the end, we're not left with one clear picture of a single woman. What we have instead is this powerful, fascinating example of how history itself gets written, erased, and then rewritten over and over again. From warrior queen to fragrant concubine, her identity has been this constant struggle. And that leaves us with one last, really provocative question. When history itself is a battleground, who actually owns the truth?